because I've had some people who are in different time zones and said, "Hey, I'd love to join, but it's just let's see, Carol, yeah, it's just in different time zones." So, um, thanks. So again, this is an informal session. I've got a couple things that I would like to share from my perspective. I think it was Angelica, if I remember, you also wanted to talk about what LLMS.txt is as it relates to search. So we can certainly do that as well. And there's James Cameron there in my lower left by the San Francisco Bridge. Always a lovely place.
I mean,
Um,
it's not a real picture. I'm not actually there,
oh,
but
no, I know.
I am
I
there.
know. I know. Um, well, good. So why don't we do this? If there are things that you all want to chat about, go and you want to maybe touch upon during our live session, just go ahead and put it in chat. And it could be anything. It could be something that you've learned. It could be something that you've done to apply AI to your work as, your own professional brand, your own professional work inside your company. The goal is just for all of us to stay connected and learn. That's really the goal. So if there's something you want to share, just go ahead and put it in the chat, or something you might want me to um, talk about. I'm happy to do that as well. And it could be, could really be anything. So um, I've got a couple slides here, but I'm happy to also just to go to the real thing. But I had to just like put together a couple slides just so that I could think through some of my thinking.
Yeah.
Um,
Sorry, James, actually, sorry, I was going to put in the chat, maybe it might be more interesting to share like verbally if it's okay with you. I
okay,
mean,
yeah, yeah,
I mean, everybody's talking now about MCP, and I know you, when we did the code, we spoke about MCP, I think for Claude, but I think
yeah.
now it's also on ChatGPT. I mean, that might be something interesting about if people are interested to learn more about MCP.
Okay. Would other people be interested in that as well? Okay, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, so I mean, we can certainly. How would I do this? Well, I'll just
That's
put a
it.
couple things.
That's it. I still want to. You got Google me these major announcements. I saw James put it there. You were at the also. You made an announcement about Microsoft updates, so I'm definitely interested in those too. We don't have to spend the whole time, but
Yeah,
just tried anything on those.
yeah, for sure. I've got a couple things I'll just kind of share, and then we can do a check-in on MCP. And I can say a couple things around, all right, how do you get started with MCP? And I've got, for those of you who were in the course, I've got slides and everything else that I can reference as well, where I've got instructions, I've got all those kinds of details as well. Um, do y'all see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So I would just say a couple things, right? And I'm not going to play these. You'll have the deck, but right, yesterday, right, we've got, and I'm not going to play this, right? But you got the link here. We have a whole bunch of things that got talked about at Google I/O. So this is like a 15-minute video. I'm not going to play it. It'll be here. So if you haven't seen like the 15-minute condensed version of all the things that got released and that Google talked about yesterday, I would really check out that. There's so many things that are there. Oh my good Lord. I mean, we could have a deep dive around any 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 one of those. And then Microsoft. So Satya had his whole keynote in Build. So again, if your company or you run on the Microsoft platform, I would, this is the 15-minute version here around all the things that he talked about. You can watch the full keynote. I would also suggest, again, if you want to dig into more about building agents on the Microsoft platform, there's all these videos that are like some of them a half hour, some of them are 1 hour videos, all the breakout sessions on build. It's still going on. I know I learned a whole bunch of stuff around all the things that they're releasing around building out agents on their platform. And so I would really encourage you all to do that. And maybe if there's enough interest, maybe we have a future session where we go into these in detail. And again, this would only be appropriate if you're on the Microsoft platform. And when I say that, right, that you're using the Microsoft 360 version of Copilot, right, that's integrated into the platform. And I'll just say a couple things here, and then we can maybe chat a bit. But I really like this picture on the right, and I don't know if any of you watched it. Did anybody watch anything from Microsoft 2 days ago around the build? No. Okay, James Cameron, I can't believe you old Microsofty. You didn't watch it? Okay.
Terrible, right?
Okay. But here's what I like, because in the past I was a little bit confused. Like they had all these I don't know, it just feel like it was a little bit complicated. But I like this view that they did on the right. Well, the one on the left where right Copilot is the app, but then they said, okay, yeah, agents is where we build all these ways to build agents that automate the processes, and they kind of simplified the positioning on the left, which is if you're an end user and you're not a coder, they have this agent builder where right, you can build these agents right without any code, more appropriate for end users. And then they've made a lot of improvements in Copilot Studio, which is the right, it's the builder environment where you're creating all these different agents. You have the ability to add knowledge base and so forth. And they've also put features in there around agent to agent configuration. And so some of these features are out now, and then there's some things that are going to be coming out in the next month. And then towards the right, if you're a developer, you have the ability to develop agents with their kind of SDK. And so I kind of like this positioning that they're making it clear which tool is appropriate for building out agents on the Microsoft platform. And in fact, if you build some agents, even in Copilot Studio, and you wanted to edit some of that configuration, you can actually bring that into VS Code and actually edit the kind of the YAML configuration of these agents in Copilot Studio. And you couldn't really do that before. You were just kind of stuck in Copilot Studio. I'm not an expert on building agents, on the Microsoft 365 platform. I am going to do some work over the next kind of week or two around digging into this, because I think obviously if you're on the Microsoft platform, you're integrated into all of the different ways of Microsoft data. And they make it easy for you to manage these and then publish these into different surfaces, right? Publishing them into Teams in right, any of the canvas. So I just wanted to share that. I would highly recommend you check out some of the videos and builds. There's so many of them on agents. And I think this is going to be a really kind of powerful way to take advantage of the Microsoft platform.
Hey,
Question on that, James.
Yeah.
So how will all of those, do you know yet, or does anyone know yet, like how those will all manifest themselves? Like when I'm looking at Copilot Studio, this is really on development. I'm using VS Code a lot because I'm not really a developer, but I'm using vibe coding extensively and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Or like, agent builder or whatever. Is this like Power Automate and stuff like that at a new level, or do you have any idea how that's going to look yet?
Yeah. So, well, I mean, we can even just go into Copilot Studio. I think I have one of my somewhere here. Let's see, Copilot Studio, right? So now to build some of these things, like I personally have an Microsoft 365 license, and I recently did it. I never have, because it's just like I'm not sure there's the really kind of value.
Is this I've got Microsoft 365 Business Standard. Is that
Yeah.
part of it, or is this a Copilot specific one?
Yeah. So this is the Copilot Studio, right? So, and then to answer James' question, so I do have a Microsoft 365 like one license. And then I most recently, because I was curious around building things, and I opted in for a Copilot 365 license. Okay.
Okay.
And so that's an add-on, and you can add on that to your Microsoft 365, or you
Oh
can
wait,
or
I've
you
got that
can
though too. So that's the
okay.
one that essentially, if you're using Teams, it does all the transcription, recording, meeting notes, and all of that jazz, right?
Yes, exactly. So
Okay,
so
perfect.
yeah, so that um right. So that's different from this, if you're just using Copilot, the personal edition, right? This is if you're on 365. So and like I said, if there's enough interest, we could do one of our upcoming sessions around how we would build out agents using the Copilot Studio. That would be one way to do it. And so they give you this environment to ultimately build these things out, right? And you can build them either through talking to it, or you can go right to configuration, right? And this doesn't show all the things that they've obviously released. Some of them are in pre-production, but this is where, right, you are describing do you want to add knowledge in, what your instructions are, right? And so this is kind of the surface where you'd be building out all of your kind of your agents here in this environment. um, and I don't really have any good examples here yet, but I'm going to be building out some examples just to see how it all works. And this flows feature I know is new. They just released that. So if you want to build out these automations where you have to orchestrate your business process in very kind of deterministic ways, they have this flows capability, which is brand new. I haven't played with it. I watched the videos 2 days ago. I think they just released it. But this would be kind of somewhat akin to if you're familiar with kind of Zapier, where you need to be able to, right, have some very deterministic, very deterministic workflows that you want your agent to kind of follow. Right. Um, so yeah, this is the builder environment, and that you would use to kind of build these things in. And right, the target audience are, right, people like you and I, right, who understand the business process. And right, a lot of times, what does it get down to? It gets down to the instructions that we want to articulate, right? And of course, we might supplement that with data and so forth. But things like if you're onto the Microsoft platform, obviously they're making it very, very easy to plug into all things, right? Microsoft, right? Um, uh, Shade, did you have a question? I heard a couple of things come up, or Alan, or
Oh no. Um,
okay,
no, no, thank you.
okay, yeah. Let's see, Yan.
Yeah, so when they connect the Microsoft to all their Microsoft applications, similar to Gemini connecting to all the Google applications,
Yeah,
they're not using MCP server, right? Because it's their own application. They're using, I guess, their
yeah,
own connection. I'm just trying to understand
yeah.
behind the hood.
Yeah, yeah, probably likely so, but kind of to reinforce what Alan said, like if you watch any of these kind of videos from Build, Microsoft's going all in on MCP. They're integrating MCP into Windows, into the operating system, and they are integrating it
Wow.
into their agent capability, right? So they're going all in around MCP, which is going to allow their agents to connect to any MCP server that's out there. And they're also, in terms of their agent platform, they're going to enable support for Google's agent to agent framework. And this is where, right, you've got communication between agents, which technically would allow any agent that you build in Microsoft be able to talk with other agents that are out there. So MCP, like, like is really kind of being built. They're putting it inside of Windows, which is like really, anything that gets built into the operating system, right? Like that's quite a message. So
That's absolutely crazy.
yeah,
So I mean, it was crazy when OpenAI kind of adopted that
yeah,
into ChatGPT, right? And this is like a pretty cool layer into their SDK and doing that
yeah.
and to take it into an operating system is massive.
Yes, it is massive. And so so I guess my message to you all, if you're curious about building agents on the Microsoft 365 platform, definitely check out all these videos that are out there. There's a ton of them around Copilot. They talk about the new features and they show each of those different use cases around what is the experience or building some agents, out. What I'm showing right now is the Copilot Studio surface. And to your point, James Cameron, that if I was to build some agents here in Copilot Studio, the actual configuration behind the agent is actually behind the scenes are these YAML configuration files. And so they actually showed that if you wanted to actually encode, edit, change, version control any of your agents that got built up through this more visual interface, which is probably easier for people like you and I, we are able to bring it into Visual Studio Code if you actually wanted to edit that within a code environment. Shade.
Um, so I had two questions, but I answered one already.
Okay.
The other one is the difference between A2A versus MCP.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Mm,
Yeah.
Okay.
So yes. So right. So um they are different things, but they're complementary. And maybe we need to have an A2A discussion at our at our next meeting. But that's where, and I think I actually have, actually I do have here in the deck, but there's I'll put this in here. There's a bunch of announcements that Google made around kind of A2A. So high level, what is A2A? It's agent to agent communication. So it's this idea that you're going to have agents. And so Google, I think it was 3 or 4 weeks ago, they announced this capability and this interoperability between agents. And these could be agents that are running in completely different organizations, right? Or maybe your agent is something that you buy, right? But you need to be able to communicate with it. So the Google released this whole idea of agents talking to agents through this framework. And A2A is kind of the acronym for that.
Understood.
Yeah, unlike so if we go to what Alan was talking about, let me see if I can find a slide on this. But what MCP does, right? What MCP does, it enables connectivity from any client. And I'm just trying to, okay, so let's see. I'm just looking for yeah, so here's kind of the visual that you might have seen, right? So the idea here is that all of these organizations, like these companies who built these enterprise applications, they've built these MCP servers, and that allows any MCP client like Claude, like OpenAI, like Cursor, any consuming application, call and use these MCP servers. Okay. And so if you've got the MCP server configured, and you're using an application that has enabled their application, like such as Claude, right? You can call, like if I'm using here Claude Desktop, this is an MCP client, right? And they just recently changed they updated the UI, right? But if you go down here, right, these are all the MCP servers that I've got connected, right? Which means that I can, right from my Claude UI, I could say, like, I've got a HubSpot connection. And so I could say something like, you know, output or retrieve all the contacts in my CRM system. I don't have to say HubSpot, right? So what is it going to do? The MCP client, right? Claude is going to go to its list of tools, right? It's got all these tools, including these that are integrated. I'll talk more about that, but these are all of and if you go there, right, you get to see all of the tools of what they can do. Does that make sense? So if I've configured the Slack MCP server, these are all the things that I can do from Claude, right? I could post a message out to Slack if I had the right channel, right? Does that make sense,
Yes.
Alan? Does that help? Okay, yeah. And so that's the key, right? Because once you have connectivity from any of these applications, then you just build those into, right, your prompt, right? So for example, right, I've got the file system, right? I can say, right, please list the files, right, on my computer, right? Now I've only given Claude access to one I think my MCP connection, I've got an error in it. That's why it's not working. But otherwise, it would bring back the files on my machine, right? So we don't have to be explicit. It's going to go through the tools that it has, servers that it has. It's going to go through all of the tools that it has, and then it's just going to do that function, right? And I think I showed this last time, is one other handy way to do this is to set up an MCP server through Zapier. And what that allows you to do is, again, this is just one way. You could set up an MCP server on Zapier and then add all the tools that Zapier has connections to. And then from your MCP client, you could call the Zapier MCP server, and you've already configured all of the tools that are in its tool belt, and it can use any one of these tools. And so Zapier's got 8,000 applications, right? And they've done all the hard work. And so this is free. You get up to 300 tool calls a month for free. Doesn't cost you anything, obviously, if you go over 300. But this could be a handy way of being able to have broad connectivity and just configure it once and call that server. And so mcp.zapier.com is so.
That's a awesome functionality where you can kind of stack those, stack the different MCPs. I'm wondering if anyone has had experience using VS Code with MCPs, or so root code or anything like this. So one of these automation tools. So this is something that I use quite often, and it's actually extremely powerful how you can move those MCPs around. I highly recommend it if you're not familiar with that.
Yeah. And so you can, so this could be a convenient way. I think if people, just to reinforce what James said, right? Things like Cursor, VS Code, Claude, right? These are all MCP clients. And so if we wanted to connect documentation into our coding environment, and have access to rich documentation to guide all of the kind of code generation, that's another technique that people are using, is configuring these MCP servers to their development environment. Let me see. I see a question from Yan.
Yeah, James, it's around what you just answered. So just to clarify, all the MCP server out there so far, MCP client out there is Claude, VS Code, VS Studio, and then Cursor. That's the three main MCP client, right? Like Gemini don't have, it's not MC client. ChatGPT is not MCP client. Is that correct?
So on the Google platform, they've made it very clear that they are supporting MCP. It's not enabled in the Gemini like UI, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see something like that, right? Come to Gemini. So the good news is we got Google, we got Microsoft, right? We have all these manufacturers, who have these applications. They're all making commitments to this open standard. So I think that's going to really help us. It's not within, like, for example, ChatGPT yet. I think they're going to need to do something like that, right? Because assistants like Claude are making it very easy for people like you and I to write prompts that interact with applications. They're going to need to do something like that. As James said, OpenAI already supports MCP through some of their APIs. They just haven't put it in the assistant per se. They're either going to support it or do something similar. Like, I don't know. We'll see what they do.
Yeah.
Okay,
that's helpful. Second question is agent. So to do agent to agent or just build an agent without code, right now it seems like Microsoft, you can do it with what you just showed us. Mm-hmm. Is there any other way of building agent without code? Any other tools?
Yeah. So one, and you can experiment with this for free as well. So I'll just kind of say this, right? Like when we talk about agents, right? Like a lot of we have to remember about the definition, right? Like about like what are we really talking about, right? And so there are obviously platforms that say they're agents, but really they're probably not. And what is the distinguishing factor that I had slide here? The distinguishing factor is who is actually doing the orchestration, right? Like, are we actually dictating what that is, or do we actually have the agents who are dictating that? So there's I thought I had a picture here, but I can't seem to find it right now. But one is like Zapier Agents is one way. It's free. You can experiment with that. That would be kind of one no-code way to build agents. You have Microsoft, and it looks like Ellen's saying that's not available in Europe yet. I do know. Well, you would know better than me, Ellen. If that's the case. I know they've got broad language support. And so that would be one way that you could build some agents. Having said that, I'll and this has been one of my learnings, is let's just look at this picture. Regardless of whether we're going code or no code, this is the conclusion I've come to, is that we need to focus on the kind of the things in the top, right? This is where our ingenuity is really in our SME knowledge. It comes down to how well we can articulate the instructions and what kind of context are we giving the models around our data, all of our articles, all of our knowledge base, and links, right? And so this kind of relates to a little bit. I'm looking at Daniel's question here, and I think this is This is something that we all experience. I'm currently overwhelmed by all these different platforms. I can't concentrate on all of them. Which platform should be favored at the moment? OpenAI, Crew, Copilot Studio. There's probably not like one answer to that, but what I would say is that regardless of which system, we just have to be really good at writing instructions, because that's what these models are going to use, right? And when we actually configure the agents, whether it's in Google, Microsoft, or anything else, no one's going to write the instructions for you. I mean, we can have models help us write instructions, and I'm doing that more and more and more. But my point is that it is a little bit easy to get caught up in all these platforms. But if we bring it back to the principles, right? If we actually bring it back to like, what do we have to get really good at? We have to get really good at how do we actually go about writing really good instructions where we can describe in natural language what's the behavior, what are the goals of each of these agents, what do we want them to do or not do, how do we want them to output the content. And I think like this is the instructions piece and the context piece is really where the hard work is, right? And I have this line a little bit to just to say like we don't really control the models or tools, right? But in all of these, whether it's no code or code, we have to do the things that are above the line. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
Right? And what I find myself doing is more and more is having the the models actually help write some of the code. So if you go into, I think I shared this last time, or maybe I did this link here. I'd recommend this paper here from OpenAI. I think I shared this last time. But one of the things that they talk about in that paper is to that white paper is to have the model have the models write the instructions for you. And I find myself doing this here it is right here. I find it's doing it more and more. So OpenAI recommends, right, that you use prompting to help you create instructions. Right. So here's the thing. I think this is my just my gut and kind of where I am. A lot of these tools, some of them are going to come and go. Obviously, the Googles, the Microsofts, right? Those are going to be around to stay, obviously. But the core skill, I think, is if I sound like a broken record, you can tell me to stop, is to get really good at writing the instructions and get really clear about your use case. What is the context that the model needs? Does it need like some additional files? Does it need to have links to certain websites? And I think that that's where the hard work is, personally. Right? What do you think? Does that make sense?
I agree. So I'm using a lot of stuff with prompts and the prompt patterns and using a prompt library with the different patterns which I can use and
Yeah.
reference in
Yeah.
and across LLMs based on the prompt patterns that I have set up in repositories. And I just say, go to this link, which has instruction using this prompt pattern. I can chain them. So whether you're using, style unbundling or chain of thought or multi-step prompts, like you've got all of those things built in, and it allows you to get incredibly powerful outputs with prompting, with actually knowing very little. And that includes, like you said, James, is actually writing new instruction. Right?
Yeah.
Or validate, like quality assurance stuff. It's freaking awesome.
Yeah, I think the instructions are really the big thing. So, what I would do, Jack says, yes, I agree on instructions. Currently work. Yeah. Like that's really that's really where the hard work is, right? It really is. And I'll just show you something really quick here. Is So this is my GitHub repo. And I don't know if I showed this last time, but like I did this on the fly in one of the cohorts the other day. And, yes, this is building out a agent in OpenAI's SDK. I think this is probably I think this is like the best way to really learn agents you can look at all the examples that I have here. And my point is that all of these instructions, all these orange, this was generated. I didn't write any of this. There's no way I would have written all these instructions for this particular agent to follow. It was all generated through a prompt that I created. And my point is that like this is what the model is going to use. The actual configuration of the agent, right? Like here in the OpenAI, like again, the basics, a name, the instructions, what tools you're going to use in the model, right? And if we get down to the basics, every one of these agents is going to have a name, it's going to have the instructions, what kind of tools do you want to give it? And if we're using MCP, right, they're going to have MCP tools that they can use, or if you're using OpenAI, right, the models can leverage all of the inbuilt tools such as web search tool, file search tool, and I would say just get really good at writing instructions would be one thing. The other thing, and I had this conversation yesterday in my cohort, there was somebody who were office hour sessions and they wanted to implement something. And I said, hey, the first thing you just need to do is break this scenario into these little building blocks, right? Because once we break them into these building blocks, they become they become tangible. And then it could be we can then focus on building, right, each of the building blocks. So that's really what I wanted to reinforce to all of us is that yes, there's these no code platforms, these code platforms, but in the configuration, even in Python, we're just specifying we want to use this model. We're specifying we want use these tools, right? But it's this top piece, right, that I would say is where the creativity is, and any one of us who can do prompting can get really good at that. And matter of fact, I found this today. This is an example on the right of using Google's agent framework. And like these are all identical, no matter what platform you picked. Name, model, description, instructions, tools. It's identical, right, to the OpenAI because it's the core foundations, right, for describing what the agent is, right? Does that make sense? We give it a name, we give it a model, we have to give it some kind of description of what it does. And the instructions here, like this is a very simple instructions. You're a helpful agent, da, 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 da. But for ours, in our scenario, we might have a very verbose instruction that talks about the output and right talks about all these other things. Now, we still have to define, if we have some custom tools and things like that, we might still need to define them. But my point is that I actually think that learning and building these out in some Python examples allows you to learn actually the configuration so that when you go, if you do decide to go to a no code platform like a Zapier or something like that, you know what's hidden and you might know what is actually being hidden from you, right? So that's kind of my preachy on that a bit, and is kind of breaking these things down. And it sounds like James, you're saying that. And I know you said at some point you want to be able to show us something around one of the applications that you use. But yeah, breaking down the problem is one of the biggest things, because if you can break down the tasks of your scenario, then you're in a much better position to one-to-one match that with some kind of agent configuration. And you're going to need to do that regardless of what tool that you're in. So I want to make sure, if everybody's okay, I want to make sure that I also answer Angelica's question. She was curious about, right, how do we make our websites discoverable, right? So anytime we are on, all right, go to ChatGPT or any of these, it's not just ChatGPT, right, and do search the web. One of the things that we can do, and I recently did this on my website, is we can use these LLMS.txt and LLMS-full.txt. And what they do is that there's a free tool that you can do, and what it does is that it generates a text file, and you can put it on the root of your server, and it essentially, that is the file that these LLMs use to go inspect your website and use it to create output inside inside any of these assistants. So if you've got a personal website and you want to be found through search, through any of these assistants, I recommend that you take one of these free tools. This is one, and I can
Sorry,
call this.
sorry.
Was there a question? Okay. You can use one of these free tools like this, and you can get a free API key.
Hey, which week
And
was that in, James? Is that Deccan?
in terms of my course,
Yeah, week one. Perfect.
I think it's there. Yeah, it is in week one. So
Okay.
I've got the slides in there. And I put the slides here. And essentially what you do is that essentially what you do is you can put your website here, and it's essentially going to generate it's going to generate a text file for you, and you can do this and I think it's scraping my website right now, and it's basically producing this. It'll produce this file essentially. It's what it does. And here, let me go back to it here. If you go to yeah, you can get a free key, and I think there's two files, but one of them, this is the longer one. But if you do, I'll make it a little bit bigger. Okay, but really what it does, it just builds this file, and this is what these LLMs go and inspect. It basically makes it's kind of similar to like a sitemap, but this is what the LLMs go, and so it's going to look at this metadata and it's going to retrieve, right, all of this from your site, and then it's going to use it in search, right?
So does that convert it and publish it somewhere as SEO?
Okay.
Or?
Yeah, so that's a good point. So what you need to do is you need to, I'm going to just copy this. Let me just copy this key here. I'm going to copy this key. What you need to do is you need to then take this file that gets produced. There's two of them. And I think this is yeah. And you're going to download it, and you need to put it on the root of your web server. So it would just be at the root of your web server. So you see this, like this is my website, and so this LLMs.txt, this is on the root of my web server. And so if so things like ChatGPT would go and inspect this, and it would use this ideally, like it's going to use this to read and use that in its search results. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
So Angelica, does that help answer your question?
Yes, I just wanted to see like how it's actually loaded in the website, but you answered
Yeah.
that question with the root
Yeah.
like configuration.
Yeah. Put the LMS.text as well as LMS-full. The full is just a longer version, a more extensive version. LMS text will definitely work, but full is just like it's a longer version of everything that it scraped. And it's all free, right? It's all free. I don't know yet if it's, done anything for me, but it certainly doesn't hurt, and it's free to do. And
You were number one on like the coaching in AI stuff.
I was. I don't know if I still am. I don't know if I still am, but I
All right.
was like, I did have people who found me, right? So who knows what I'm going to, please find me a leadership coach, yeah, that has deep expertise in data and AI. I'm probably not going to put me. It's probably going to call up a lot more important people than I have, right? But hopefully it would do a better job of finding me. It'll find other people. While it's doing that, let's see what you got.
A quick question. So if the Firecrawl website, you just put in your website and
Yeah.
it produces these these sitemaps output, what do you need the API keys for? Where do you put the API keys?
Yeah. So like some of these websites will just create it for free. Like some of these, it'll just create the lms.txt. But if you want to produce like the full version of this text file, some of these just require you to get a free key, and you would use that to, I can show you here, but you would use that to just generate the full version of these text. So let me see. So you would only need the key if you want to produce the full version of the file. So yeah, here's the generator. Yeah, this
I
is the
see. I
generator.
have to put the key
Yeah.
in this generator. Or?
Yeah, so yeah, and I'll put this link in here too. So like this is the actual site that will generate it, right? So you and I could do this. We don't need a key to do this, but if we want the full version of this, and so this is what happens. You put your and I'll put this link in the deck. So it's just going to create this text file. So you see down here, it's like scraping your website, and you can just download this TXT file. You don't need any key. But if you want this longer version, then you can enter your API key. And this is all free. Does that help?
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. And right, and see, I can download this or I copy this. It's just this, yeah, it's just a text file, right? And if I want to put in my, if I want to do the full, it's just going to generate the full version, right? It's just a little bit more expansive. So I'll put this in the slide deck. Hopefully that if you all want to use that and leverage that to be found.
Yeah, I think I'll give it a shot. Oh, sorry.
That was a question in the chat? Okay.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
So you might be updating your blogs in your site constantly, right?
Yeah.
So do you have to constantly generate a new LMS text generator?
Yeah, if you're adding, yes. Yeah. But maybe you build a workflow to go automatically do that, right? Maybe you do
Yes.
if you're creating content, right? Yeah. And so that's actually what it looks like. Yeah. I'll also just say too, if any of you, I think most of you have Cursor and Visual Studio set up on your machines. If you don't, one of the things that I did recently was I documented all this step by step. So if any of you were like, hey, I want to be able to run some of these, build some of these things, I've got step by step. If you follow these instructions, Windows or on Mac, you're gonna get this set up. I spent a lot of time documenting that. And then I'll just say I've got a lot of examples on my GitHub for the examples that I have in the course. And I have this documented in the slide deck, but I have examples here around using the Responses API, and then I've got examples of using the OpenAI SDK around kind of building out some multi-agent patterns here. And I would say, I'd say like this is a really good way to learn the principles and the mechanics of these agents. And again, not to sound like a broken record, what do we got? We've got name, instructions, tools, model, and if we're doing handoffs and things like that, we have to describe like who we're handing off to. But I just want to reinforce, I think the actual definition and creation of agents is really going to come down to these instructions and a lot of the SME knowledge that we have. Okay, well, let me take a pause here, see if there's other things people want to talk about that I haven't covered. I guess Alan did I don't know if Alan's still with us. Are you okay in terms of MCP?
Yeah, it was great actually. Thank you for that. I guess just a very quick question, a basic question, but like I'm trying to find like what is exactly the difference between the API and MCP because it is a bit similar, but I guess
It is somewhat
I'm
similar. It is somewhat similar, and I think just for MCP, I think that so here's a short course. I think it just came out today or something like that. So this is on deeplearning.ai. So if anybody wants to, I haven't watched it, but these are the makers of MCP. So the MCP was built for the models to call those applications, and so it's a protocol for the language models to call these different applications, right? Because the language models they don't know what tools are, right? They're just programmed and they're fine-tuned and all that. They don't know what these are, but the MCP is a mechanism that makes it easy for the language model to use these servers, MCP servers, and obviously that's tying into these APIs, right? All these applications have APIs. They're just making it easier, right, for the models to actually use these APIs. So, like for example, HubSpot, when HubSpot released their MCP server, like I don't know, 2 weeks ago, there was specific calls that specific API calls that they enabled through the MCP server. Maybe it wasn't everything, right? Maybe it was just a subset of it, right? So it just makes it easier. It makes it easy for these language models to actually read and write and call and make actions using this protocol versus all the APIs. But at the end of the day, there's APIs likely that are the ones who are doing the work on the server side, but that's kind of extracted from you. You still may need API keys for some of these things if it's like a paid service. Like if you want to use Google Maps and things like that, I think as we saw, you still need to have an API key that gives you access to that server, especially if it's a paid service. Yeah. Lei, did you still have a
Yeah, well, so back to the topic of the Copilot discussion earlier. I think you mentioned there were a lot of resources out there available for Copilot. I was just wondering if you can share a couple of your top ones to start.
Okay. Well, I would go to build.microsoft.com, and this is what I did. I basically I signed in and I did this the other day. And I basically built my little agenda here. So, if you're interested, you see all of these, and Lei, you might be able to see this, but there's all of these things in the session catalog, and there's a whole bunch of them that are all online. And this is where I would go if you want to learn kind of building out agents on 365. There's just a lot of good ones. I'm happy to pick out the one or two that I watched. I haven't watched them all, but this is where I would go. Does that help?
Thanks. Yep.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
sorry, Jim, I don't know if it's too small. What is that exactly? Is Microsoft course or?
Yeah, so does that help? Yeah, Microsoft.build.com. Yeah, this is where all these sessions are recorded. And they're still going on. I think it goes through Thursday. And there's a lot of really good breakout sessions. It certainly goes beyond Copilot and agents, but there's a heavy dose of building out agents. Does that help? Does that answer your question, Alan? Yeah, and if there's interest around building out some agents on the Microsoft platform, I'm happy to do that in an upcoming session if there's any interest. Yeah.
I know I would be interested.
Expensive. It's so expensive, $200.
Well, if your company is on the Microsoft platform, right, then great. If like for me, I just wanted to get experience with it. And so for me, I've got a Microsoft kind of similar to James Cameron is, I have a 365 account and I did an add-on with a Copilot, just to get experience with that because I'm curious. And there's some companies that I'm working with that are on the Microsoft platform, and I want to be able to obviously suggest what they would do to be able to get that, a lot of some of these benefits out of the box, especially for people, right, who are business process, like they're business people. They're not going to code. I think things like Copilot Studio or even within the base 365 app is going to be a helpful way for people who are not going to, who are not going to do some things through code. So they do, if you do get Microsoft 365, it is a year commitment, which I wasn't crazy about, but I guess that's Microsoft. I don't know. But yeah.
Yeah, it was
Okay.
honestly like that was super frustrating for me as well. Maybe until now, right? Because the only reason that I was really using Copilot was for like the meeting transcription, meeting notes, and all of that stuff where it's absolutely phenomenal.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. I think if you're using, to like James is saying, I think if you're using Microsoft 365 in your work or in your personal business like James and I, then yeah, you just get a whole bunch of value out of the box, and it can be really valuable. I found Copilot like a year ago Studio a bit clunky and limited, and one of the big things they announced too, and I know we're at the top of the hour, is that you can bring any model you want inside of Copilot Studio. Before it was completely limited to just OpenAI and their, I think, 4.0 model. Now it's like you can bring any model you want. So they've really kind of opened up the door around kind of models and connectivity with MCP. So I'm like, hey, this is something I want to kind of learn and get a bit more savvy on. Okay, was that helpful?
Yes.
Yeah.
So as long as I have Microsoft 365, the Copilot is add-on.
It's an add-on, yes. Yeah, it is an add-on. And I found the other day I was able to get a 15% discount in my admin screen. And so it brought the price down like for the first year by 15%. So, I mean, for me, I'm just like, hey, I want to actually give it a little bit of a go just to see its capabilities. So, okay. Will you all let me know for future sessions? We can meet 2 weeks from now. If there's something that we want to build out, or I guess any of you who want to share something. I know James, you're willing to share us some of the things that you've done around VS Code and Rue. So if there's some things like that.
Yeah, I mean that just ties a lot of this stuff that you're talking about as well, right? Like with the instruction and getting, like the planning and what is the problem? How do you break it down? How do you plan and document this stuff and then implement it? That's
the big thing, because I think sometimes our natural inclination is to go to some tool, a lot of times, but it's just like we have to like break this thing down, right, into what are we going to do and what are we going to tell the model, and regardless of what tool, like we still have to do that work, right?
Yeah.
Hey, James, just something interesting. I just shared a tool for all of you guys. Very interesting. I use quite a bit actually, almost every day actually. It's called OpenRouter. And actually, it's a tool where actually, with all the change happening every day, it's actually you can see every day for marketing, finance, coding, what actually language, what's model is actually the best. I don't know if you use it, but it's actually kind of amazing. And I mean, maybe I can do a demo next time where you can do, but you can see, for example, like, for example, if you go like, legal, you said, okay, Google Gemini 2.0 Flash is the best. But then if you go to, for example, if you go to programming, they will tell you, okay, DeepSeek is better, or OpenAI, GPT 4.0. I mean, it's with the stuff moving so quickly, it's quite useful to use actually. But feel free to use it.
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing that. I was not familiar with that. I'm gonna bookmark that. Thank you. Yeah. So much stuff.
But the good stuff there is like they tell you every day. Like, people vote on a daily basis. Like as of today, which the best tool is actually for OBC. Like
Wow, that's a lot.
I was very impressed with Manus, by the way.
Oh, were you? I haven't really used it. I mean, I have access to it. I've never used it. Maybe you need to give us a demo or something next time about how you use it. Yeah. Okay. Sure. Write that down. Shaday's going to give us a. Has anybody else used it? I had got access to it for like a month or so ago. It's just like, oh my God, it's another tool.
I applied for access, but I don't think I got it.
Okay.
Maybe it landed in a junk mail somewhere. But I'd love to give it a go.
Yeah, I mean, I hear it's good. So Shaday, if you're up for that, that would be cool.
I have my own business website, and then I was adding AI to it, so I gave the information and built my website in no time.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess you need to educate us. Okay, well, why don't we call it a wrap? Really,
so what is the name of that application? What is the name?
Manus.
Manus. MANUS.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was like a rage, a month or two ago. I mean, I think it still is. Yeah, thanks, Shaday. I just haven't played with it, so I'm not really familiar with it. It's like, oh my gosh, there's so many tools there, right? So, oh my gosh, which one am I gonna?
Can I just ask one quick? Oh,
yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to ask about the deck. You mentioned the deck a couple of times. Do you assemble a deck for this meeting?
I did today, so that I could be a little bit more thoughtful in terms of being responsible to you all. So I'm going to share that, and then if people are up for it, I'll share the video too. Yeah,
that'd
be helpful.
Thank you.
Because I know there's some other people who can't join us, so I'll do that. I'll figure out some place to make it easy for the deck in the video. And
thank you.
Yeah, thanks all. It's good seeing everybody
James,
again. Yeah, go ahead.
Quick question: if I get the Copilot, it will have the Agent Studio in it or not?
So yeah, you're going to be able to you'll be able, I think. So what I don't know is like what do you get in Copilot Studio if you don't have an M365 license, Copilot license, and I'm not sure exactly where that line is in terms of, right? Obviously, if you have M365 Copilot, you're able to interact with all of your Microsoft Docs and other things like that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, everybody. So good seeing everybody again. And
awesome.
I know, Daniel, you said like, hey, my God, there's so many tools. Like, which one do I use? And I've gotten this from a number of people who've actually been through the course too, because it's like, oh my God, like, I don't think there's like one tool to rule them all. I would say like, what is the core skill of it? It's like the actual process around going about it, I think, is a skill. You know what I'm saying? Around the breakdown, around what it is, around the instructions, because then we're actually just, deciding what tool or tools that we're going to use, and there's going to be certain ones that are going to probably win or have longevity more so than some others. I look for like things like connectivity, and I look like how progressive are they really in the pace of what's going on. Some are just not going to keep the pace of certain companies, just going to kind of fall by the wayside. Right. Yeah. Okay, everybody. Hey, we'll see everybody in 2 weeks, huh? Okay, man.
Awesome.
See
Looking
everybody.
forward to it.
Thank you.
Thanks so much,
Take care.
James. See
Yeah,
all.
thank you.
very
Thank
much.
you.
Good seeing everybody.
Okay.
Thanks, bye.
Bye.